Hi and welcome back to the program. In this video we're going to look at something that is going to allow us to simplify greatly the code that we saw in the last video about inheritance. But in order to make digesting things a bit easier, I'm going to first teach this in a simpler environment. Let's imagine we've got a method which has arg1 and arg2. And then it just returns arg1 plus arg2. This is just a sum method essentially, and we could do my method 5 and 6. If we wanted to add more things together, just as an example, my long method, we could do something like arg1, arg2, arg3, arg4, arg5, arg6, and so on, and then return that, which doesn't really make a lot of sense. An option would be to use a list. For example, def my list addition. And then we could return sum of list arg. And we already know this. We already know that we can do this because we've looked at lists, we've looked at the sum method. There's nothing new here. However, there is something that differs between my long method and my list addition, and that is the following. If we want to do my long method, we pass in numbers like so, and if we want to do my list addition, we have to pass in a list. And that may not be a big deal, but you have to pass in a list of what you want to add. There is a way, however, of adding an unlimited number of arguments. Like so. For example, this addition simplified method has a parameter called asterisk args. This is a list of arguments that have been passed to the method. So then we can do addition simplified 3, 5, 7, 12, 14, 55. These parameters get converted to a list, and then we can operate on them as a list. But we don't have to pass in a list. That makes things a bit more complicated because then when we call this method, we have to remember that we have to pass in a list. Whereas if we have something like this, we can pass in an unlimited number of arguments, and they will be a list, but we don't have to worry about them being a list. Just as we have args, we also have something called kwargs. So what are kwargs? Well, we have a parameter called asterisk args, and then we have asterisk kwargs. So let's print those out. Print args and print kwargs. And let's call what are kwargs with some parameters like 12, 13, 56. And let's run that. So what do you think is going to happen when we run this? Remember, none of our other methods printed anything, so the only thing we're going to see is this print args and print kwargs. So I'll press play because I wouldn't expect you to guess. But here's what we get. A tuple of arguments and an empty set. So evidently, kwargs is some sort of set because it's got the opening and closing curly brace that we know is a set. But here's the thing. Not something we've seen before, but in Python, we can give names to arguments. We can give names to arguments. So we can say 12, 34, 56, but then we can also say name equals Jose, location equals UK. So when we run this again, we get a set of key value pairs, which we know to be a dictionary, name and location. If we knew we always want name and location, then we don't need to use kwargs. We can use name and location, like so. And then, well, args and kwargs are no longer defined, but we can, my bad, print name, print location. This works just as well because Python knows to associate Jose with the parameter called name and location with a parameter called location. So we can do this. And what's interesting about this is that we can do it in the wrong order if we want. And that works just as well. So this simplifies things a bit because now the order of the parameters stops mattering. And what starts mattering is the name that we give the parameters. So we can do this if we want, or we can not do it if we don't want. Something to remember, however, is that we cannot have something like arg1 passed at the end. This gives us an error because the positional arguments are following a keyword argument, and you cannot do that. So the arguments that have a name always have to come at the end. So the 56 would always have to be at the beginning. That's the only sort of caveat with it. So now that we've looked at args and kwargs and we know what they are, how would we simplify this friend method? And what I would do is I would substitute salary for args. And then I would substitute this salary for args again. And then what happens is that we can pass in any number of arguments, and then we're passing sort of any number of arguments back to the init method. And in here, when we pass 17.5, that's the only argument left other than origin and friend name. So we've got origin, we've got friend name, and then we've got one positional argument left, and that's going to be args. We're going to pass that on to the init method, and that's then going to be salary, because friend name and the school are already set, so the only arg left is salary, so that's going to be that. So let's run this with the inheritance, and you can see that we still get the 17.5 there. The added benefit of this is that if we then add something like job title then at the end, we can just put it in at the end here, software developer, and we do not have to change the friend implementation. We're now passing two arguments, and then they get used. So this allows us to simplify things a lot more when we don't know what is coming. And of course, if we wanted to make it keyword arguments, then we can do that. But here we have to say salary equals and job title equals. And then made a mistake somewhere. Have I? Oh yeah, of course. The job title is missing from this one here, so I forgot about that. Software developer. And then it still works. So the named parameters will still work as you would expect, because now salary is 1750 and job title software developer are being passed in as keyword arguments, and then they're being passed in again to the init method, and then they get matched to salary and job title respectively. It is not uncommon for when a method needs to be generalized like this to do this. It's very, very common to pass both args and kwargs, and then it can basically cope with anything that you change. For example, we could pass in salary as 1750 and job title equals software developer. So this one no longer has a name. We can now do this. This is fine because the args get passed in first and the kwargs get passed in later. So everything sort of matches up nicely. So hopefully this all makes some sense. And remember, this is a Python sort of refresher. And also the examples here are very limited. We're going to be using this a lot more throughout the course, and then everything is going to sort of gel together, make a lot more sense. So I apologize if this all seems rather sort of jarring and useless. In this case, it is useless, but it will become useful as we move along the course, I promise. But that's everything for this video, talking about args and kwargs, and how you can pass in an unlimited number of positional arguments, those defined by position, like these three, and keyword arguments, those defined with a keyword. And that's everything for this video, so I'll see you in the next one.